here's some exciting, a lot of fun that you can have with these games, stepping into someone's space. Look at the monitor, here's how you do it. Go to a building where there's an elevator, and there they all are watching the numbers. Walk in, the difference is you don't turn around, you face them. And you smile. Now, it wouldn't matter what number they pressed when they got in, at the next floor, out they go, everyone. Here's a variation. You get in an elevator with another fella where there's a third person and face him. There's a good chance he'll face the back. Here's the next. You get in an elevator with a friend and face the back, wait for the next guy to get in. First of all, he thinks he's walked into the back of the elevator. Now, the pressure is too great for him, and he will be forced through your pressure to turn around and also face the back of the elevator. We're going to take a break now, and we hope that everybody has picked up something on what it feels like to have your personal space invaded.
Ladies and gentlemen, Australia's own body language expert, Allan, Pease.
Now, they teach body language now in universities and colleges, and practically every sales and negotiation course has it in there. It's even found its way into the latest Australian Macquarie Dictionary as common language. Now, the question is, what makes it so popular? Well, it's because we know from a scientific standpoint that body language signals have 4 times the impact of what you say. Now, that being the case, try this simple test. Next time you go into a hotel, say to the person behind the bar, give me 3 beers. How many beers would you expect to get? 2. Yeah, 4 times out of 5 you'll get 2. Now just try this test. Everybody join me, please. Finger in the air. Now on top of your head, on your forehead, on your nose, on your chin. I said to put it on your chin. How many people have got a chin out here? Now most of you are influenced by what I did, not by what I said. Now, with body language, you've got to look for congruence. That's the first thing. That is to make sure the gestures are agreeing with what you hear, because quite often they don't. Now say, for example, I don't like you. If I really feel I don't like you, I make this gesture. But what if I'm saying, yes, I really do like you? We're going to look now at a perfect match contestant who's describing the weekend he had with the girl who was his date. What a wonderful girl she was. We're going to show you first in slow motion, then show you what he actually said, and he changes his mind right at the end. Here's the clip. Now, in slow motion, what would you say his attitude was? Positive or negative? Yeah, clearly he's negative. But he's saying what a wonderful girl she is. What a great time he had. Now, we're going to show you this clip now in fast motion. Listen to what he says at the end when he comes clean. This is the girl.
She's an okay girl, you know, No, she's not. I don't like her.
Number 1 is to look for congruence. That is, the gestures match. Number 2, you've got to make sure you never take any one single gesture and try to say it means something. If I button my coat, what does that mean? I'm cold. It could also mean I'm defensive. That is, I don't like what you just said. Now, what if I grab at my neck and start to jiggle my tie? What does this mean? Yeah, a bit hot, uneasy, telling a lie. My shirt's too tight. Have a look at these clips and see if you can pick a cluster, a group of gestures. Now, Bob Hawke is buttoning his coat because he's in Brussels on tour, and it's freezing. He's actually in a good attitude. Now, contrast that against Mr. Keating, who's about to face an angry press. He starts by buttoning his coat. Now, he's smiling as though he's going to be cooperative. Next, he wrings his hands together as the smile broadens even more. Now, Now this is a cluster, a group of gestures that tells you that the coat buttoning was negative. And he finishes up by crossing his arms. His face is saying, yes, I'll be cooperative. His body is saying, no way are you going to get any information out of me. Now this next scene, Bob Hawke is giving a speech. He's about to start pulling at his collar. Now what does this mean? Does that mean he's telling a lie? Does it mean he's uncomfortable? Does it mean he's hot? If we freeze the picture, you can see that Hazel's put too much starch in his shirts that day. In this next clip, you'll see another example of a fairly typical cluster. This man, Mr. Ruxton of the RSL in Victoria, is driving home his point on Asian immigration by using a finger baton, a karate chop. He sits back, crosses his arms, and his cluster says very clearly what his attitude is on immigration: negative. In his next scene, Mr. Hawke is just about to rub his nose. Now, we know people who rub their nose often tell a lie, but he's promising tax cuts next year. Now, was that an actual lie or not? We don't take any one gesture on its own. Let's see what happens. You got a runny nose. Now, if I scratch my head, it can mean I don't understand. It could also mean I've got dandruff. If I rub my nose, it could mean I've got an itchy nose. It could mean I'm also lying to you. If I hitch my trousers up, it could mean they're too big. It could also mean I can't wait to get back home. You never take one on its own and try to say it means something. You take a whole group called a cluster. So if somebody says to you, it makes good sense to me, I can understand what you're getting at, and by the way, how's your girlfriend? Don't believe a word they say. Now, of all the body language signals we use to send to somebody else, there's nothing that sends any signals as powerful as the eyes, particularly where we gaze. Now, we use our gaze to send a number of signals. For example, we use it to send a signal of aggression, where we lock in on someone and our blinking stops. We use it to show interest, that we're keen on someone, by giving them more interest and more gaze than we normally would. We look at them a lot. And we use it to show disinterest, disrespect, by looking away and not looking at them at all. Now, another use that we have with our gaze is controlling where somebody's looking. Now, this is particularly important if you're in the sales business, if you're a negotiator, or if you just want to show something to someone. Let me show you an example. Can I ask you to come up? What's your name?
Derek.
Come on up here, Derek. Give him a big hand, ladies and gentlemen. Come on here, Derek. Over here, mate. Okay. Let's do that. I have something here to show to Derek. My objective is to convince him. Now, I know that 87% of what his mind gets comes through his eyes, 9% through his ears, 4% through the other senses. That is, he's a visual creature. So if I don't control where he's looking, I'm not going to get the message across, right? Here's the way most people do it. Well, here you can see 57,000, Derek, was the amount of money that we decided to put in, mainly because of the fact that most people over that period of time thought that was the right amount. Now, 10 years was... He doesn't know where to look, the poor devil. He's rubbing his nose. Now, I'm going to use my eyes as pointers, and I'm going to use my pen as pointers to control the information. Watch carefully. Interest, Derek. Now, he sees it and he hears it. Now, the reason we put that in there was because that was the right amount of money to be spread over 10 years, okay? Now, there you'll see a period of 15 years on this loan. Now, the reason we just see what's happening, I'm controlling where he's looking. Now, what happens, though, if he doesn't look up? This time you don't look up, resist. $15,000. Now, that was an amount that... we decided to put in for 15 years. So wait a minute. What happens when he refuses to look? He's going to read and not look up. Don't look up at all, resist. $15,000, Derek. That's an amount that... Now, if he doesn't look up, there's no point in me continuing to speak because 87% comes through his eyes. But like fishing, I'm going to try and hook him again. I go down again. 15,000? Now, that's an amount of money. He learns pretty quick. Okay. What happens if he takes the information away from me? Now, power players love to do this. He takes it off me now. How do I control his gaze now? He's got it over his side. I use my extendable pen. So now down the bottom, you know, research with slow motion cameras that record eye movements shows something very interesting. And that is that when you're talking with somebody in a social situation, that is, there's no pressure, no tension, you're looking at a very clearly defined area on their face. That area is here to here, down to their mouth and back. 90% of your gaze is directed in what we call the social triangle, and we call that a social gaze. Now, has everybody been in a situation where the atmosphere was friendly? You felt good. All of a sudden the atmosphere changed and went cold, You felt threatened. Nobody said anything, but it just changed. Has everybody experienced that?
Yes.
What the camera showed is when that happened, the gaze has changed from this eye to that eye to a third point in the centre of your forehead. That is, if I intentionally look at this area of your face, you'll feel threatened. If I look at your area here, you'll feel it's social. We call that a business gaze. And that's when you put the screws on someone, as they say. And we also found with men and women, when they meet each other, they give each other what's called an intimate gaze. And you can guess what that's all about. It goes from one eye across to the other eye, down to the chest, or lower, and back. Women give it at 1/400th of a second to a man. A man's a lot slower. Here's a question for you. How can you tell if somebody really likes you? That is, they really do like you. The vibes are good, as we say. We have a rapport. Well, there's some physical signs that you can look for. Now, what's your name?
Neil.
Neil. Give Neil a big hand, ladies and gentlemen. Now, here are Neil and I. He's gone straight for his cuff. Friendly. What is there about Neil and I that you can tell that we have a good rapport and the vibes are good? Anything about us you can tell? Put your hands behind your back. Put your hands on your hips. Anything special about us you notice? Put your hands in front of you. Now he's doing the broken fly. Yeah. We are mirroring each other's position. Now this is exactly, put your hands on your hips, this is exactly what people who really get on with each other do quite unconsciously. If you like someone, you'll start to mirror their gestures behind your back. If they like you, they'll do the same. Now the studies show when we're with strangers, we make sure we don't stand like anybody. Try going to a bus stop and doing this. On your hip. Cross your arms. Behind your back. Now he either gets real angry and thumps me or he walks off. He can't handle it. It's too much for him. When somebody really likes you, they stand and sit like you do. It's also a very effective strategy. If you want someone to see your point of view and get on side with you, you stand like them. As they change your copy, before long they say, this character understands me. Then you have a rapport. Would you say that Ronald Reagan likes Bob Hawke? What do you think?
Yes.
Okay, no, yes? Here's the answer. You have a mutual sitting position, identical. Now the leader always starts first. I don't know who did this first, but it's an identical and mutual position. They get on real well, no doubt about it. Now here Bob Hawke is attacking the Liberal Party. They form a power block to repel this by all sitting in exactly the same position. Here's Prime Minister Nakasone. Beside him is Bob Hawke mirroring his position. They get on real well. Now Bob Hawke wants to see what's happening on his right-hand side. He can hear a noise. He doesn't want to turn his head. Watch what he does with his eyes. Now he looks back to the Japanese Prime Minister to see whether he saw him do that or not. Now he goes for another one. Here he goes again. Ooh. Have you ever walked into somebody's office? A bank manager, lawyer, an accountant, maybe your own boss, or you've gone for a job interview. You felt you had something important to say. But the minute you sat in the chair opposite him or her, you felt insignificant and you had nothing to say. Has everybody experienced that? Yes. There's a good chance you've walked into a power play. Now, power play is where the person set it up to take away your power and prestige and give them a lot more for themselves. Now, the sort of things you might see include power body language. Here's a collection of the sort of things that the person who thinks they're better than you will use to show status. Thumbs poking out of the coat pockets, very popular most bosses. Palm in palm behind the back is used by those in authority, royal family, Prince Philip and Charles, police officers, in the army, the navy, those who think they're in charge. Standing with your legs spread is a good male aggression power play. Look at this, baby. Yeah, thumbs on the lapel. Rocking up and down on the balls of the feet to get extra height is another typical power play. And putting your hand on top of the other person to get the upper hand is another classic example. Now with that, we're going to have a look now at a power play situation. A man is about to go and ask for a pay rise. He's going to walk into the boss's office. The boss is sitting in his power chair, which has a high back. The higher the back of the chair, the more power people think you've got. And you think of the Pope on his great big chair, 18 feet high at the back. You picture him sitting on a stool. That doesn't look right, no power. Let's have a look at what happened with this man going for a pay rise. Now the boss's office window faces west and it's late in the afternoon. So the sun goes right into your eyes. He has the power desk, which is a real big one to keep you away. His chair moves in every direction. He's got all the power status symbols around his desk as well. The power ashtray, which you couldn't reach anyway, is too far away. Confidential red files that you're not allowed to look in. Mercedes or BMW or Porsche keyring, and the power phone system. Now here's your chair down on the floor. And you're expected to negotiate. Here comes our fellow for the pay rise. Knocks on the door, walks the plank right down the desk. Talks to the boss. Boss, I've got an appointment to see about a pay rise. What does the boss do? Ignores him. Now looks over the top of his glasses, condescending. Puts his hand right on top. I got you, fella. Sit down there. The fella sits down, his nose level on the guy's desk. Crosses his legs, turns himself away. The body language is very negative. From this position, he has very little chance of negotiating successfully. The boss still ignores him. Now, when he does talk, he looks over his glasses, keeps the pen in his hand so he can keep writing, ignoring the fellow even more. Now, this poor devil hasn't got a chance of getting a pay rise at all. He's right down low on the floor. Now, the boss goes into the boss's favourite position that shows he's smarter than you. There it is. That was the one gesture that most bosses use for the staff. It's a gesture that most women say they can't stand the boss doing at them, or the husband. Am I right, girls? The one that says, I'm smarter than you, and then he puts his leg over the arm of the chair, right? You know how you fix that? You say to him, there's a split in your trousers, and see how... All right, now, let's have another look at a situation where we have a woman going to negotiate for benefits, for superannuation for the other staff members. She's aware of power plays. The two things she does different, she knocks on the door and calls the boss's name when she comes in, forcing him to look up so he can't dominate with his gaze. Next, she puts the information on a round table in the corner before she walks to his desk, saying to him clearly, this is where we're going to do business. Let's see how she handles it. Here he is at the desk. She comes to the door, knocks, calls his name, forces him to look up. Now she puts the information on the table, walks around his desk so he can't get her with that dominant handshake. Gives him a double-hander. That's really rocked him. She takes a step back, he takes a step forward. He's getting out from behind his desk. Now she says, the information is over on the desk, let's go and talk about it. He's not feeling real comfortable about this, he'd rather stay here at the desk. But she guides him across. Now she sits him down, she's got him at a round table, which is the conducive area for making sales presentations, for negotiation. She gets the information now. She's going to use the pen to control his gaze so he can't look away. She didn't hook him the first time. Now she hooks him the second time and starts to nod her head and he copies. Things are looking good. Now he feels a bit rattled. As a large ditch effort, he's going to sit back and do his favourite gesture. Here it comes. This'll dominate her. Try that, baby. But she's handled his type before. She knows just what to do. She copies. Now there's two of them doing it. First one to change is a loser. He's had it. And what about our political leaders? There's no better opportunity for us to see body language in action for politicians than in that historical debate in this country. Now, it's interesting to see what happened. The political commentators said that it was Andrew Peacock's body language that won the debate. Now, it's interesting to see the play. Bob Hawke is one of Australia's most mobile body language exponents. He's good at it, even though he has a repetitive nose touch, eye rub and ear pull. On this particular night, he didn't play it that way. Here's the way it went. He got his right hand to firmly hold his left hand in place so he wouldn't scratch his nose, face or ear, because of the negative implications of doing that. He hardly touched his face all night. Now, Andrew Peacock, on the other hand, laced his fingers together, had a funny look on his face. Not a very becoming gesture. It shows and highlights frustration. Now, Bob Hawke's most repetitive gesture was rearranging his notes all night. We sped this up for you to see how it happened. He was unaware of what he was doing, but he was effectively getting his thoughts into logical sequence, and he was coming out in body language by rearranging the notes on his desk. Andrew Peacock, on the other hand, tried to make a strong and powerful point whilst using a limp wrist gesture. Again, Andrew's face looked good, his words were good, but the limp wrist detracted from what he had to say. Now, when Andrew attacked Bob Hawke came back with a fierce attack of pointed finger, tilted head, constricted pupils, and laid home the law. Made it very clear. But when Bob Hawke attacked Andrew Peacock, something different happened. Andrew started to preen himself. He did his coat up, touched the makeup on the side of his face, scratched the sweat under his nose. Oh, you horrible man. Now let's have a look at the strategy for the night. Here was Bob Hawke's strategy, was to address his answers to whoever asked the question. He didn't look at us at home. It was a third-party strategy. We felt as though we were outside looking in on a private conversation between a group of people. Now this is where the debate was won and lost. Andrew Peacock's strategy was to look right into the barrel of the camera, and there was no doubt left that his message was exactly meant for us. We, the voters, felt he was talking to us personally. He looked straight down the barrel and no other place, and this is where the debate was won. Andrew's body language actually got it right. Now, let me ask you all a question. How many of you felt that Andrew Peacock won the debate? Hold your hand up. The majority felt that way. Now hold your hand up if you can really remember anything he had to say. Yeah, very few people, which shows that people listen to not what you say, but what your body says. Somebody asked the question before, how do you know when the politicians were lying that night? Simple, when their lips were moving, they were lying. There's no doubt about that at all. Now, I've got to say, I didn't really mean to say that at all. Now, one of the subtle differences between royalty, in terms of leadership, and politicians is this. You rarely see the royals pointing their finger at anybody, but politicians do it. Now, the finger point comes in two varieties. The baton, where I strike you on the head because you're stupid. And we have the more dangerous one, the dagger, that drives home and digs holes in you. Now, this is dangerous because we know this usually is a signal that you're about to cop a punch. Now, have a look at the screen and see how this works. Here's Bob Hawke using the dagger to drive the finger home. Now, politicians don't normally punch each other, not in public anyway. Now, contrast that against this next scene. On an American television show, the man in brown was daggering his finger at the audience. The interviewer didn't like it. Here's what happened.
I don't listen to you. I've heard enough of you already. I'm telling you. I'm telling these young people.
It's a nice show, and if you don't knock it off, I'm throwing you out personally. Can you hear that, Marine buddy?
Yeah,
all right.
Listen.
Now, in this next scene, the man on the right being interviewed is talking about some of the problems of Dutch territories. He's offending a fellow in the audience who's not only using a dagger, but extending it. The man being interviewed makes a nasty remark to him, starts pointing his finger back at this fellow, and here's what happened. This is a result of too much finger pointing. Here's some union confrontation. This woman is using her dagger finger to drive it home into this fella, to tell him where to get off. Now, he knows he's in trouble, but it's not very ladylike for someone to punch. But she's about to attack. The finger goes right home deep. Now, he turns, he knows something's about to happen. She clenches her fist, she steps back, and here it comes, right into his face.
Spoken about tonight, do they mean the same thing?
The question is, does body language vary in other countries? That's a good question. I've learned that one the hard way. For example, recently I went to France, and I was greeted by a Frenchman who kissed me on both cheeks. And that was really embarrassing for me. I was tying my shoelaces up at the time. The answer is yes. It does vary. Let me demonstrate this. Can I ask everybody here to hold up your right hand and show me the number 5? Can I see the number 5? Right, now hold it there. Change it very quickly to the number 2. Now keep it there. If you look around, with the exception of one or two very rude people, everybody has those two fingers with their palms facing in an outward direction. Okay, palms down. If this was Europe, let's say it was Germany, and you were Germans, how do you predict everybody would be holding the number 2? Now that's the victory sign for a German. This way. Because the Germans count from 1 to 5 like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. How do we do it? Try it. 1, 2, 3, 4. And where does the thumb come in this country? At the number 5. Now, if you started on your thumb and you were born or raised in an English-speaking country, it means you're either a slow counter or there's somebody around you with a European influence because they start on the thumb for the number 1. Now, let me give you a couple of basic examples of cultural differences. What does this mean to you? Okay. What does this mean to a German? The number 1. What does this mean to a Northern Greek? Pretty close. It means why don't you go and get whatever you can think of that's the worst thing you can say. There's a very insulting signal. Now there's a problem because in this country, what is this on the side of the road? Hitchhike signal. What happens if you hitchhike through northern Greece? You get a lift? Maybe not. What does this gesture mean to you?
Okay.
It's an okay signal. What does that mean to a Frenchman? No. 0. Nothing. Worthless. Naught. What does it mean to Japanese? Money. It's the money sign for the Japanese. What does it mean to a Maltese or a Northern Greek? Okay, if a man is effeminate, what gesture will we all use to signify we think he's effeminate? The limp wrist gesture. Now, the Greeks and Maltese don't say he's like this, they say he's like this. Never tell a Maltese everything's okay. You'll have more friends than you counted on. Incidentally, you might recall the Aussie Bonds ad on television. Now, the Greeks and the Maltese are prolific buyers of Aussie bonds. Well, of bonds in general. When the first Aussie bonds came out, the Greeks were not buying them. Why was that happening? The Greeks come out on their ships, pockets full of money. They turn the television on, what do they see? Aussie bond. Aussie bond. Would you like a translation of what they're saying? Aussie bond. Aussie bond. They're not buying any of those bonds. Do we have another question? Yes, up the back here.
Can anyone learn to read body language better?
Well, there's a couple of very good ways to learn how to become better at body language. The first, of course, is to pick up a copy of one of the world's biggest selling books on body language. It's great value, there's no doubt about that. One of the most effective ways is to spend 15 minutes a night watching television with the sound turned completely off. Now, by doing that, you've forced yourself into the situation and circumstances of a deaf person. That is, you can only watch one medium, which is the body language, which we know transmits 60 to 80% of the message. Now, at 15 minutes a night for 3 weeks in a row, at the end of 3 weeks of doing that, suddenly your perceptiveness, your intuitiveness, your hunches and gut feelings become very acute, and you start to see and pick up things you were not seeing before. That's the most effective way to do it. Who else has a question? Yeah, down the front.
When you were demonstrating why people, the way you shake hands, you say, oh, this person, I like the way you shake hands. You were looking for 3 men. There are 3 men sitting here. Yet you came to me and you passed me, and I was just wondering, what sort of thing does that mean about your body language?
That's a good question. I'm certainly glad you asked that question. Well, and let me paraphrase that in a question. If you're between the ages of 20 and 40, which everybody in this room is, there's no doubt about that, you have a problem with handshaking. And this relies particularly to the girls. Because the girls who are between 20 and 40 grew up in the era where television came into being. Now, from the corner of your eyes, girls, you notice that your mother did not shake hands as a custom, because her generation didn't do that. Yet you watched the television and saw the American and European girls shaking for it. So the average girl now between 20 and 40 is confused about what she should do. Now, this is a problem for the fellas. Because here's what happens. We've all been through this. You're at a function. Fellas, you're being introduced to a lady. You watch out of the corner of each other's eyes to see if anybody's going to reach for it. As you're introduced, she reaches for her handbag to get a tissue. You think she's going for it, and so out you go for it. Vacant space. Pull it back. She sees it. She reaches for it. And then she pulls it back. You go, has everybody been through this? It's a problem. The average girl doesn't know what to do, and the average man, when he sees a woman's hand coming towards him, quite frankly, he wouldn't know what to do with it. Is that right, girls? Where do you grab it? How hard do you hold it? Should you kiss it? And what do you do? I make a point of shaking every girl by the hand that I meet, for 2 reasons. One is it avoids this happening, and it makes us on an equal basis right from the start, because I can give her an equal handshake, and I suggest you fellas do the same. Secondly, I can learn a lot about her attitude towards me through that shake, which is helpful information. Who has another question? Yes, sir.
I have a friend who is particularly good at meetings and things like that, at picking pieces of lint and fluff off his sleeves and off his jacket. I'm just wondering what that means.
Does everybody know somebody who sits there and picks imaginary pieces of fluff and dust off their coat? Tests were done with this gesture. They got teenagers. In the teenagers, they mixed people in their 50s and 60s. The teenagers were instructed at a given point to start talking about drugs and the virtues of them, almost to a person. When the drugs story came up, the 50 and 60-year-olds looked away and started picking imaginary pieces of fluff from their jackets. This is what we call a disapproval signal. That is, they didn't want to give their opinion, but they didn't want to know about it. So what happens if you're talking to a lady and you think you're doing real well and she starts to do this? Your course of action's obvious. Who else has a question? Here's a question over here.
Alan, can body language be used in a place like a court to detect whether someone's telling lies?
Can it be used in a court? In the United States now, it is being used in a court in two ways. One is to detect deceit in a witness, and secondly, the lawyers and solicitors are using it to select a jury. By making a brash statement to a potential jury about the innocence or guilt of the particular party, they then watch the body language of the potential jurors. Those who have decided he's guilty, if they show negative gestures, they move them out. Those who show open or positive gestures, they select them in. That gives the person who's been convicted a better chance of getting off. Another question? Over here.
What does it mean when someone, when they speak to you, they put their hand on their mouth or they rub their chin or go like this?
Hand to face and chin rubbers. The chin rubbing gesture is probably the most interesting. If you're in selling or negotiating or dealing with other people and you need to know where they're at, this is one of the most valuable signals to look for. It goes back 1 million or so years to when the cave tribes would meet. All the elders would sit around, men and women stroking their beards, making a decision. Now, if we asked all the fellas here today to make a decision, what do you think about this, fellas? Most of them would reach straight for their chin and start to make this stroking gesture, as though they had an imaginary beard. Now, most girls do the same, but the gestures are not quite as bold as that. They're more petite and go like this, like they've got a little goatee beard. Now, in a selling situation, of course, this is invaluable information, because if you ask me, would I like A or B? Ask me if I'd like A or B.
Would you like A or B?
Well, now, I am going through the decision-making process. You shouldn't interrupt me when I'm going through this process. The gestures that follow this will signal my decision. A or B? Let me think. What have you got? Negative. I don't want either. If I say neither, you've got a fight on your hands. Now, a good salesperson would stop me at that point and say, now, just before you answer, let's go back and reconsider these main points. So this one is an evaluation signal. Do men do this at you often? Who has another question? Let's take one over this side. Yeah, this gentleman here.
Yeah, Alan, is it true that psychics are the only ones that can really read body language signals correctly?
That's a good question. Somebody who has an innate and inborn ability to decode body signals can pose as a psychic. Because if I had an incredible ability to decode body signals, from your signals, unconsciously I could figure out what you were thinking and how you were feeling, and I could relate it to you and call myself a psychic. In fact, I'm not a psychic. I'm a good salesperson, not a psychic. There is a difference. Question up the top here.
I'm the sales game and I meet a lot of people who wear jewellery and so on. Does jewellery represent anything like rings or things around your neck and so on?
Yes, jewellery is very revealing. Anybody who has anything artificial, such as cigarettes, jewellery, toupees, false teeth, glasses, all have their own special sets of signals. Probably the most significant, if you're in the selling business, is a watch signal. Now, if we had a 5-year-old child in the audience and the child wanted to look at his watch, how would he do it? By the time the child's become a teenager, he's learnt that that is not very nice. So he looks at his watch like this. Now, when the child gets to be an adult, and most of us here tonight are adults, and they're at a meeting where there's a boring speaker, you want to get a look at your watch, but you don't want to look obvious. Here's the one you'll see. That is primarily a watch-peaking gesture. Now, if you're in the middle of selling and you think you're doing really well, all of a sudden a customer does this at you. What's your course of action?
Stop.
You better stop and say, he's looking at his watch. Why?
Obviously something I said he's not believing.
He's either not buying, not believing. You better stop and maybe ask a question. Well, what do you think? Now, people who are in the 40-plus age bracket don't look at their watch like that, because they've come from a generation where you were taught to be polite, regardless of how boring a person may be. So if we've got some 40-year-olds here tonight, and there's no clock on the wall, if you think this is boring, I wonder how long till we finish, here's what they do. And we've put on boring speakers in front of groups. Good evening and welcome again to Body Language. Now tonight we're going to take a look at what people do at parties when they meet each other and check each other out. We're going to analyse handshakes and what some of the hidden meanings are you find behind them. And we're going to introduce you to talk language, where we're going to show you how to read between the lines what people actually say when they're trying to put it over you. Now we know with human communication that when you're face to face, there's three things you use to put your message over. Now the first thing is words. That's what you actually say. And we can take that and write it on a piece of paper. The second thing is the way you sound, what we call the vocal element. And the third thing is the way you gesture, the way you move, and the way you look, what's commonly called body language. Now, I'm going to ask you a question. When you had the last conversation with somebody, which would have been only a short time ago, what percentage of the time do you think you would have been relying on what you actually said, that is the words, to make your message go across? What do you think? Who thinks it'd be at least, say, 50% of the impact was on words? Put your hand up. Who thinks it'd be less than 50% for words? Anybody doesn't think? Let's take the second element, the way you sound, the tone of voice. Who thinks that accounts for at least, say 50% of how effective you are? Okay. Who thinks it'd be less than 50? Okay, body language, the way you look, gesture and move. Who thinks that accounts for at least, say, 50%? Who thinks it'd be less than 50? Okay. Studies show that face-to-face, what you actually say, that is the words themselves, account for 7 to 10% of your impact. In other words, people don't listen to what you say. They just don't listen. They act on what they think they hear you mean and what they think you want by the way you look. Now let me demonstrate that. What's your first name, please?
James.
Give a big hand, James. Come up here. Always got to get the tallest person in the room. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to ask you 10 questions, James. Nobody's ever got 10 out of 10 right. Listen to the questions, listen to the answers, and answer them yourself in your own mind. And this shows people don't listen to what you say, they act on what they think is going on and what they think you mean. 10 questions from 0 to 10. Here we go. You ready?
Yeah.
Question number 1. What's your full name?
James Irving France.
Correct. Never make the first question you ask somebody new one to which they don't know the answer. If they say, I don't know, they feel dumb. Question number 2. Here we go, right through to 10. This tie is made of silk. Spell silk.
S-L-I-K.
Not close.
I say okay. Let's try it again.
What do cows drink?
Milk.
Now sit down, they drink water. Sorry.
Little cows drink milk.
Little cows don't drink milk. Now, all right, be fair. Be honest. Who thinks cows drink milk? Put your hand up. Come on, be honest. Who thought the answer was milk? Come on. Yeah, that's your first response. Your second response is little cows drink milk. You try to rationalise why you're an idiot, correct? Want a second go? Come up, I'll give you a second.
Oh, okay. It's glutton for punishment time.
Now, so far you've got your name right. All right, here we go. Now this time I'm going to gesture and move. How many animals of each species did Moses take on the ark?
Oh, 2.
Sit down, it wasn't Moses, it was Noah. Now here's the problem you've got dealing with people. Most people think cows drink milk and Moses had an ark. That's the problem you got dealing with them. Now the follow-up to the subject body language was this book called Talk Language. Now what I did with this was to analyse the 20 to 30% impact of what you say and the 7 to 10% of words. And what we discovered was that in the English language there are 550 cliches. Now cliche is pre-packaged words. You learn these things. And you use them when you want to cover up what you're really thinking. Now a couple of simple examples of these can be seen in places like airports. So I flew on a plane today. Now the fear of flying, which is in the book of lists, is listed at number 8. We don't like flying in aeroplanes. Now the fear of dying is number 7. Anybody know the number 1 fear of Western man? Public speaking. Speaking in front of a group. You'd rather die 7 times more and go up on a plane than come up here right now and talk to the group, is what that means. Now even though the fear of flying is number 8, when you go to any airport, they do and say things with the cliches they use that encourage you never to fly again. Now they've spent millions to get you out there in the first place. Here you are, you drive out to the airport. You're reassuring yourself it's going to be okay, it's going to be okay. And as soon as you get to the airport, what have they put there for you to see? Right across the top of the airport, 25 feet high in most countries, the word terminal. Now think about this. You think cows drink milk, you think Moses had an ark. What do you think happens to your body when you see the word terminal? What do you think of? You think of, you're dead, finished. And then you get on the planes and they still give first-time flyers impossible things that you can't do. Such things as put your seat back forward. Now, which way does it go if you don't fly? If they're late, they reassure you by saying, we should have you in the air momentarily. Split second, right? We're going to be landing shortly. Now, how long is the runway going to be? Shortly. Now, one thing you won't hear on Australian Airlines, or Ansett Airlines, is the following cliche that you'll hear on most international airlines. They say, ladies and gentlemen, in the event of a depressurisation. Now, what do you imagine is going to happen to you? What do you think? Yeah, okay, the windows have popped out. The plane is plummeting towards the ground in a death plunge. This is what you picture. But they say, no need to worry because these masks will appear. And during this death plunge, with the windows gone, place the mask over your mouth and breathe normally. One airline used to say there'd be no smoking in the rear. The best one of all, you hear this on most airlines. I can remember one night in turbulence, we were bouncing around the sky trying to find a hole to